Hey, it's been a while, hasn't it? Now, I know in my last video I said I would return to the video essays now, but thing is, I'm a little bit stuck in my latest script. It's the longest one I've ever made, meaning it will also be my longest video yet. It also means that I'm not done with it still. And since it took this long, we just went through Steam Next Fest again. In this October edition, we had several more upcoming indie games to look at. This time around, I've organized things a little bit better on my end. I'll divide this Next Fest coverage of 53 titles into two parts. The first one will have 24, and the next one will have 29. I'll even try my hand at something a little bit different. In part 2, I'll wrap things up with a top 10 ranking of all the demos I tried out. So let's take a look at them, shall we? Could I interest you in a whole lot of games that have come out recently or will come out in the near future? Welcome to Strig's Game Café, everyone. Have a cup of Steam Next Fest. Fans of precision 2D platformers will probably have their fill with A Fox's Tale by Danny Pete. As the name implies, you play as a fox called Eva, who's on a journey to find whether or not she's the last of her kind. The narrative didn't seem all that detailed, but it had some interesting notes of both fantastical and sci-fi elements to it. For the gameplay, the closest comparison I can make is with Celeste. You can jump, climb and dash to avoid obstacles and reach the end of each room. The levels are much shorter than Celeste though, and to me that's a good thing. There are also optional collectibles you can grab in each level. They offer different challenges too. Some will need to be collected continuously before touching the ground. Others will spawn multiple smaller collectibles, and you need to get them all before the time runs out. The level design can get pretty intricate too, and even in the demo I had to lock in for these last few rooms. I think people who like these kinds of games should be right at home. A Fox's Tale's release date is set to coming soon. If you're looking for a retro-style 2D Metroidvania with a nature against technology theme and religious undertones, maybe Alruna End of History by Neckbolt is a good fit for you. The game may or may not be a sequel to Alruna and the Necro-Industrialists by the same developer. I'm not sure, the Steam page doesn't seem clear on that. You play as the titular Alruna, a dryad. The world is completely taken over by the Necro-Industrialists, who from my understanding are trying to engineer their way to heaven or something. Your initial objective is to free a fellow dryad, but the game opens up a lot after that. The movement options consist of a jump, a high jump from a crouch, a dash that's also a slide, and a ground pound. From my playtime, I think exploration is the main focus of the game rather than combat, even though there are some enemy encounters here and there. Also, I never figured out how to access the so-called upgrade castle for the upgrades. The game only told me it was available and nothing else. Otherwise though, I think the art style is really cool, the movement is tight, and the dialogues have this dark and kinda bizarre feel that I really like. Alruna, End of History, is set to release on the first quarter of 2026. Are you someone who likes these hard climbing games with unorthodox controls like me? Then join this cat girl in her quest to become a god in AMNYAM by Yulu. AMNYAM is a platform game that you play with your mouse. You left click on these targets to propel the cat girl in their direction, and your goal is to climb to the top of each level. Along the way you get new abilities like a sort of boost jump you can use by right clicking to hover in place for a moment, a rolling attack you can use to destroy obstacles, a way to see the path ahead of you, and so on. You also get to talk with strange beings and even get a few side quests, like squashing every sunflower you see by clicking on them. If that's somehow not too hard for you, You can choose your difficulty. I love that the description for the hardest one just says Hell. Or attempt sudden death mode, with roguelike mechanics and a wall of death that chases you. It also unlocks lore stuff apparently. Oh, and the Steam page says the game also supports multiplayer, with the ability to help your friends by clicking on them. AMNYAM's release date is set to coming soon. How about a roguelike deck builder set in a toy shop where teddy bears fight for a spot in the shelves? That's the premise of Barely Brave by Barbaric Games. First thing I noticed when playing Barely Brave is that you have a lot of things to take into account in your run. For the basics, your cards deal damage to your opponent and consume energy, which you have a limited amount of every turn. Inflict enough damage to your opponent to win the battle. But you also have to watch out for the damage type dealt by each weapon. Additionally, there are these symbols on each card called a brand. Each card can hold up to 3. By playing same brand cards adjacent to one another, you can trigger effects like increasing your damage, allowing you to block attacks, or giving you extra money. On top of that, and of course the effects particular to each card, your run is also influenced by patches, equipable items that give you extra effects and abilities. You can buy these, along with more slots for each, at the shop that you visit after every fight. The shop also has consumables and a few different services like the ability to change card brands or increase the effect of certain abilities. For a price, of course. I think Barely Brave could definitely use some more game feel in its UI here and there, like more animated UI elements that don't just disappear when you click off of them, especially the tutorial and dialogue ones. But I like the game's aesthetic. I think it hits a bit of that creepy cute vibe. Barely Brave is set to release until the end of 2025. How about collecting programs and busting viruses from your desktop? That's what you do in Berserk B.I.T.S by Berserk Boy Games. As the name implies, they're the same people who made Berserk Boy, a game inspired by Mega Man. This time, they're drawing inspiration from the Battle Network subseries. Berserk B.I.T.S is an idle RPG where you collect programs that are like virtual pets. You feed these programs to get chips from them, which you can then use to battle viruses while sending your bits to explore the network. The money and treasures you find can be used to buy more programs and items to increase your battle capabilities. I like the overall gameplay and the graphics are a treat as a longtime Battle Network fan, but I have to say that the timing of exploration feels a bit off. It's too slow for a regular game, but Berserk B.I.T.S also wants you to pay attention to it too often for an idle game, like when finding treasure or making use of chips in battle, which is more effective with player input. I don't know, I think this kinda takes away from the idle elements of the game, given that it forces you to pay more attention instead of just coming back every once in a while. Regardless, the overall loop was pretty fun. I'm particularly curious about the other bits you can apparently unlock in the full game, and other programs you can collect. Sounds like you'll be able to become a truly powerful virus buster. Berserk B.I.T.S will launch on November 20th, 2025. Looking for an action-adventure game with a combat system inspired by Souls-likes and bullet hell games, and a story full of mystery? Look no further than Bittersweet Birthday by World Eater Games. The game starts with the protagonist waking up in a lab with no memories. As you're guided by a disembodied voice and pursued by a bird trying to kill you, you try to piece together the reason why you're there. And after your first big fight, you wake up in a flashback. A somewhat distorted one at that. Going around, you hopefully get some answers, and maybe a lot more questions. I think the way this story is told is pretty interesting. Bittersweet Birthday's demo seems like it has the first taste of what will likely be a lore-heavy game with lots of strange happenings. The combat system is interesting too. On the surface, it uses traditional action elements like dodging or weak and strong attacks. But there's one aspect that makes this interesting: the memories. These work like passive abilities. Think the charms in Hollow Knight. You get them by exploring the environment, but what I truly found unique was the way to equip them. When I was introduced to the system, I noticed I didn't have enough slots to equip one memory I had. So I equipped another memory that took away some of my health, basically making the game harder, but giving me the slots I needed. From what I understand, memories that grant you abilities cost slots, while memories that are detrimental give you more equipping slots. I think this could be a really interesting way to add depth to the gameplay, especially when you consider the memories' association to the story. Depending on how the full game does them, we might be looking at a really good example of Ludo narrative harmony. Bittersweet Birthday releases on November 11th, 2025. In the middle of a foggy night, your car breaks down. Looking for aid in a nearby mansion, you end up trapped inside, having to confront things in the dark and perhaps even your own memories. Bloodright by Oko is a 2.5D survival horror game where you shoot shadow creatures, solve puzzles, and craft items to find your way across a terrifying manor with connections to the protagonist's past, which you can discover by finding yourself, literally, in different rooms. I did have a bit of an issue with combat. Firing your weapon is intuitive enough, but the problem is the way that your mouse controls not only your aim, but also your camera. So a lot of times whenever I fired a shot, the game did this. The enemies aren't that tough, and you don't need many shots to kill. But the thing is, the game has a mechanic where some enemies can reanimate after a certain amount of time. To fully destroy them, you have to equip special batteries to your flashlight and then fire it at the corpses like a weapon. These batteries, obviously, are a limited resource, so you have to think about where to use them, preferably in rooms with multiple enemies, so you can later traverse the mansion corridors more easily. Despite my issues with combat, I did like the aesthetics. Love how the lights kinda have this effect where they visibly blend together when you get close with your flashlight on. The story so far seems a bit obtuse, based on what I saw in the demo, but I think in a game like this, it's clear the real answers are being set aside for the full game. Bloodright is already out. Looking for some simple fun involving knocking penguins as far as possible with a baseball bat? Then Bouncemasters 2, Pengu Throw, by Legendary and Joy Bits, might be something worth looking into. Look, I'm typically not into endless runners or games that are this casual, but as I played I got to a point where I was replaying levels for better scores, faster than I'd like to admit. Plus the art style might be simple, but it makes perfect sense with the silly nature of Bouncemasters 2. The gameplay is pretty self-explanatory. You launch the penguin with a baseball bat, then bounce it along walruses, frozen explorers, and other stuff. After you lose all momentum, the level is over, and you can gain coins according to the distance you traveled, and stars based on which of the level's specific objectives you managed to complete. The coins can be used to buy permanent upgrades, so your penguin can be launched higher and farther. The game's Steam page also teases a campaign mode with branching map routes and secret shortcuts. It's not available in the demo, but I figure people who like the current arcade-like gameplay would probably like to see this when the full game comes out. Bouncemasters 2 Pengu Throw is set to launch in the first quarter of 2026. Okay, I'll admit, this is probably the demo I was looking forward to the most. So, what do I think of Bubsy 4D? It's good. Not bad, not mid, not even just okay, it's actually good. Bubsy 4D by Fabraz, the same people behind Demon Turf and Demon Tides, is the latest entry of the series belonging to the platforming mascot of all time. I know I'm far from the first content creator to make this comment, but it's actually insane how not only has Bubsy been slowly making a revival, but his games seem to be getting increasingly better. All the while other platformers from the 90s and 2000s have been slowly left in the dust. Alright, enough dilly-dallying. How does Bubsy 4D play? Well, it's a level-based 3D platformer in which you have to get back the golden fleece stolen by a bunch of sheep known as Babots. Bubsy sports a Mario-style running triple jump, a double jump, a pounce that extends your jump but also serves as a homing attack, like in A Hat in Time, a gliding move, and the ability to turn into a ball to move really fast. The fun isn't only centered around completing levels and collecting yarn and blueprints. You can also try to reach the end as fast as possible, get medals, and even join leaderboards with your times. I think the speedrunning community is gonna have a field day with this game, really. Additionally, the yarn and blueprints you nab can be spent in a shop to buy new moves and also new costumes for Bubsy. It's not perfect, yes. There are a few camera starters here and there, as well as some strange collisions on occasion, and the enemies could definitely do more than just walk towards you. But overall, Bubsy 4D really feels great to play. I think Fabraz has been doing a good job, and I hope they keep it up. Bubsy 4D is set to release sometime in 2026. Looking for a stealth game with cartoonish themes? Maybe you're a fan of Chicken Run. Then take a look at Chicken Run Eggstraction by Aardman Animations Limited. It's a top-down stealth game set in the Chicken Run movie universe, where you try to rescue chickens from being cooked. The game is divided into stages, each with different objectives. You choose a few chickens to form a rescue squad, each with their own different abilities, with the leader having access to exclusive traits. While on a mission, you have to evade detection and use your brain to activate switches that will turn off the chicken's brainwashing collars, yes, that's a thing, and open the way so they will be able to flee on their own. You can also destroy crates to find corn and gears to buy items in a shop that you can then bring into future missions. And depending on how you clear the mission, you can win stars that can be used to get new chicken agents, to use in missions, or to upgrade the ones you already have. Between the tactical action and the funny banter between the characters, I found Eggstraction to be really entertaining. And while I have been a fan of the franchise since I saw the first movie as a kid, I don't think it's 100% necessary to enjoy the game, to be honest. Oh, and the Steam page also says the game supports co-op. So if you have a friend who's into this silly breed of stealth, call them over to join the chicken liberation. Chicken Run Eggstraction is already out. Fans of Metroidvanias who are looking for a new hand-drawn game to add to their collection will definitely want to take a look at Constance by BTF. You play the role of the titular Constance, who's on a journey through a decaying world created by her mind. That's what the Steam page says, at least. The demo is arguably more gameplay than story focused. You start with a simple brush stroke, or strike I guess, and a healing move, but after a bit you get new movement options and new ways to interact with the environment. Before long, the game will thrust you into death traps that will test how well you can use these skills. It's one of these cases where a game is relatively simple mechanically, but it executes these mechanics so well that it doesn't really need anything else. You know, it's a bit off topic, but all these obstacles being in Constance's mind reminds me of how the guards of the White Palace in Hollow Knight apparently saw the place as a torture chamber inside their minds. I mean, why else would you imagine a place with buzzsaws all around? Anyway, the aesthetics, animations, and sound design are really well done too. Definitely one of those games that are a feast for the eyes. All the quirky robot NPCs and enemies look really interesting. There is one other fascinating aspect to Constance. You see, when you die, you actually have an option to go back to your last checkpoint or continue from the room you were in, while also making your enemies stronger as a consequence. Not a mechanic you see every day on games like this, and I'm curious about how this feature will affect something like late game progression. Constance will release on November 24th, 2025. Ever felt like working a shift in a warehouse with your friends? Following orders as quick as you can, dealing with safety hazards and trying to avoid crashing out? No? Well, too bad. Crashout Crew by Aggro Crab is here to give you the multiplayer forklift experience that Shenmue never would. Crashout Crew is a party game with some roguelike elements. Basically, you take a contract and then have to perform a series of increasingly difficult shifts where you use your forklift to carry boxes to delivery trucks. Now mind you, this game is obviously meant to be played with your friends, but I had to get some footage for this video as quickly as possible, which is why you're seeing me play alone. That's the only reason, don't get it twisted. After each shift, you have the opportunity to get new stuff to fit into your forklift or carry into the warehouse for the next stage. Like racing tires so you can perform more sick drifts and accumulate charges for these boosts. A gripper hand so you can hang on to boxes better, and also do this. Subsequent rounds may also add new elements to the warehouse, like falling meteors and lights that turn off every once in a while. Get hit too many times or get the order wrong, and you crash out, losing control of your forklift. But keep your mind in the job and eventually you finish the contract. Crashout Crew's release date is set to coming soon. If you're in the mood for a cartoony RPG inspired by Paper Mario, keep an eye out for Escape from Ever After by Sleepy Castle Studio. You play as fairy tale hero Flint Buckler, who along with Dragon Tinder and Bard Wolfgang, is hired by the company Ever After Incorporated, a large conglomerate trying to take over all storybooks. The demo has them receiving an assignment to enter a book and search for another Ever After employee that went missing, none other than Detective Sherlock Holmes. Said book is called The Shadow over Innspeak, and if you know your literature, you know where this is going. Exploration is done by controlling Flint and throwing his buckler around to hit things. You also have one partner walking around with you at all times, easily swapping between them on the field. Tinder can light torches with her fire breath, while Wolfgang can use the power of his song to do things like making plants grow or summoning gusts of wind. Battles also play much like in the Paper Mario series. Characters can perform different attacks by spending MP, or Mokka points in this game, love the name by the way, and even use special group skills with synergy points, SP for short. Of course, the regular attacks all have their own action commands that make them deal more damage if executed right. You can swap characters mid-battle to get an advantage, especially when faced against enemies that have shields that can't be damaged from up close. Outside of fights, you can also equip different abilities. Each character has their own slots for equipping trinkets, this game's equivalent of badges. Overall, I really like the game's story and combat system. It could be a fun time for those of you who, like me, played Bug Fables and are looking for something on that same vein. Escape from Ever After will release in the first quarter of 2026. Here we have yet another beautifully hand-drawn, lore-heavy 2D Metroidvania that also plays really nicely. Fatal Claw by Endev Games has you playing as Keisha, a strange cat who was apparently resurrected by his ancestors. Your goal is to traverse a vast underground world overtaken by a bizarre plague. In your exploration, you find gems to exchange for items, battle enemies to absorb their powers, and of course, find hidden loot. As a side note, I love that Keisha has a special idle animation here. If you stay still for a few seconds while inside the treasure chest, he'll curl up and sleep inside it. That's really cute. Besides your typical melee strikes, projectile attack, and heal, Keisha's move list includes abilities taken from certain enemies you defeat, like rolling or summoning spikes to get enemies off of you. There's also a skill tree that can be developed through the use of special items, granting you passive traits. In general, Fatal Claw is not only a pretty and fun Metroidvania, but also very intriguing story-wise. You meet a lot of interesting characters along the way, and from very early on, you get the idea that this is a pretty grim world. It may be curious to learn about the people that have somehow survived to call this underground home, as well as what sort of cataclysmic event could have caused all of this. Fatal Claw is set to release sometime in 2025. Your eyes open. You're in a strange hangar, sitting at a table. A number to your right, a masked stranger holding a gun to your left, and in front of you, a typewriter. Better write like your life depends on it, because it does. Final Sentence by Button Mash is easily the most unusual battle royale game I've ever played. If it wasn't clear by now, this is a battle royale typing game. You're presented with several sentences and you then need to write them down as fast as possible. Whoever finishes first lives. Oh, and of course, don't even think about making mistakes, because if you get it wrong 3 times, the next thing you'll be writing is your epitaph. It's almost weird explaining this game because there's practically no gimmick at all. Enter a lobby, then type out whatever randomly selected text appears in front of you and try not to die. And yet, I quickly found myself going for more rounds on this one. It helps that the game has some leniency too, with the whole 3 misses thing, and also the fact that your death is technically not even guaranteed after those misses. It's more of a Russian roulette thing, so if you're lucky, you might be able to stay in the game. The line at the top showing everyone's ranking also definitely added to the tension. I know I got hooked into the experience. My only advice for those that do as well is to remember that only one can remain in the end. Oh, fuck. Final Sentence will launch in the final quarter of 2025. Looking to traverse a surreal landscape as a bunny girl? If so, you might wanna play FUNKYHEART by Juice. FUNKYHEART is a 3D first-person platformer where you play as Bun, a girl who awakens in a strange new reality with no memories. She has to navigate this bizarre landscape with the help of her newfound friend, Mavi. Besides walking, running, and jumping, the platforming in FUNKYHEART mostly revolves around 2 elements: being able to free certain mechanisms like platforms or doors by clicking on them, and also bunny hopping. The way bunny hopping works is that it's basically a toggle that makes you jump constantly. You can also use your normal jump in the air as a double jump after bunny hopping. It helps you go faster and higher, so I can definitely see speedrunners loving this feature. However, I do have one problem with the game. I'm curious to know whether or not anyone who tried the demo had the same issue. See, for me, the game had some weird input lag on several moments. At times it would feel like I was stuck and couldn't move even on flat surfaces. And I know this wasn't an issue with my keyboard, because on the day I played this demo, I also played several others using the keyboard, with no issues like this one. Again, not sure if anyone else went through this, but it's such a shame because the game's aesthetics and overall gameplay seem pretty interesting. It's just that with this weird input lag, it becomes a lot harder to actually play through the platforming. That said, I wouldn't have included the game on this list if I had no hope for it. I'm definitely willing to give it a chance if this lag issue is fixed. FUNKYHEART is already out. If you're also looking for some unorthodox roguelikes, Goblin Sushi by Old Cake Factory might be up your alley. Goblin Sushi has you operating a sushi restaurant for a goblin clientele, with some mouth-watering ingredients. The clients will take their place at the conveyor belt, and you have to make sure they receive their order before their patience runs out, by making them according to the recipes. As you serve the sushi, you level up and unlock new recipes and skills to make your restaurant more profitable. And you need that profit, since every once in a while, your landlord will come in to collect. And you better have that fast stack of cash ready when the time comes. You also need money to cook more rice and order more ingredients because of course those run out. Goblin Sushi was a really addictive experience for me. I mean, if you watch this channel, you probably already know I love my roguelikes and roguelites. I think fusing that genre with resource management for a restaurant was a very interesting take, and while it's not the prettiest game in the Next Fest, I think the art direction worked well enough for what the game is, giving it that flash feel to it. Goblin Sushi will release in the first quarter of 2026. Looking for an exciting 3D action roguelite that you can play with your friends? Look no further than GODBREAKERS by To The Sky. GODBREAKERS is a fast-paced action roguelike where you choose between different classes and loadouts, and then go take down man-made gods in surreal and vibrant worlds. The game can be played solo, as I did when trying out demo, but it clearly advertised itself as a co-op experience primarily. At the start of a run, you choose one of the biomes. Your objective, of course, is to defeat that location's boss. Along the way, you face clusters of enemies and gain different abilities, like you'd expect from a roguelike. Each weapon has different properties, and you can also copy abilities from enemies by filling up a gauge. This not only adds to your arsenal, but as you steal abilities you can detonate enemies, which does AoE damage but also looks really sick. Completing certain objectives also unlocks new classes, traits, and cosmetics. Because of course, a co-op game like this would allow you to customize your character. GODBREAKERS is already out. I've played my fair share of narrative-heavy point-and-click adventures in my life, but I don't think any of them put me in the role of a baby with psychic powers. This is Goodnight Universe by Nightstream. It's a story of a 6-month-old baby called Isaac with some pretty interesting powers and one hell of an internal monologue.
By the way my parents submitted to my every demand, I expected to look like some fearsome god king.
The game will have you using Isaac's psychic powers to perform tasks like organize his room, but you also have these moments where you read thoughts and try to help out the family.
Just read the words in the book. I'd do it for her. For them. Yes, for them. Fresh figs, say it. I'd do anything for them. 3 crisp carrots. Anything for my kids.
Both the demo and the Steam page also tease that Isaac will be captured by an evil corporation and will have to make use of his wits to escape. Goodnight Universe is a pretty simple game mechanically, but it promises a story-rich and emotional experience, and fans of adventure games might really dig this. The presentation works really well. I love both the art style and the lighting effects the game applies. And again, I have to ask, when was the last time you saw a game with a premise like this? Goodnight Universe will release on November 11th, 2025. If you're looking for a retro gaming experience with cute characters, then I hope you're a fan of guinea pigs. Gruniożerca Trilogy by Take It Studio, I hope I didn't butcher that too much,
Żerca.
is a collection of 3 games, all centered around a guinea pig named Grunio. First, there's Gruniożerca, an arcade-like game where you have to change the guinea pig's color to match carrots that fall from the sky so you can collect them and reach a high score. Miss enough carrots and the game's over. The second game is Gruniożerca 2, The Great KV Rescue. It's a 2D puzzle platformer where you place blocks down to form a path so the guinea pig can reach a key and unlock the door to the next level. Your supply of blocks is limited, so keep that in mind. Finally, there's Gruniożerca 3, The Great KV Cleanup, an isometric puzzle game where you have to step on the trash tiles to clean them up. Each tile has a number underneath, showing how many times you have to step on that tile for it to disappear. Once all tiles are gone, the level exit opens. Oh, and make sure to not fall on the carpet. Overall, all 3 are pretty fun retro-style games. Looking at the developer's itch.io page, I could see that they were apparently all released in NES ROM format originally, and now this remastered compilation is giving it a new coat of paint. Which is pretty cool if you ask me. Gruniożerca Trilogy is already out. If you're an RPG fan, then maybe you might find one of an unusual pair of protagonists to be to your liking. Hermit and Pig by Heavy Lunch Studio is a game where you play as, well, an old hermit and his pet pig, if it wasn't obvious enough. Living in the woods, the two are happily foraging for mushrooms, and suddenly they stumble into a corporate conspiracy threatening the nearby town. Thus begins their search for a legendary giant mushroom. Combat revolves around using directional inputs to use the hermit's different attacks, while the pig plays more of a support role. Different types of attacks, like punches or stomps, work better against different enemies. Depending on which move you use, you might do more or less damage. In most cases, this is actually pretty intuitive too. Many bugs that crawl on the ground take more damage from stomps, while flies and mosquitoes are more vulnerable to being slapped. There are also moments where you engage not in battle, but in dialogue. Here, your biggest obstacle is the hermit's social anxiety. Be careful not to say something weird. With Hermit and Pig, it's kind of impossible for me to not get reminded a bit of Mother 3. And I mean this in a lot of ways. The pixel art style used, the battle system, the bizarre choice of enemies you encounter, and the humorous tone of the narrative. I love the demo and I'm really curious to see more. Hermit and Pig will release on January 22nd, 2026. When it comes to hack and slash games, having a flashy combat system with a great game feel is paramount. And Homura Hime by Crimson Dusk is definitely a game that has both of these things. Homura Hime is a 3D action game about the eponymous exorcist who's sent to fight archdemons, souls that transform into demonic entities by harboring strong emotions at the time of their deaths. She's accompanied by Anne, her loyal aide, who also provides support in combat by shooting at enemies from a distance and breaking shields. As for Homura herself, she can perform light and heavy attacks as well as a dash and a parry. The combat feels pretty good, and it's not just button mashing either. For example, some attacks have bullet hell-like patterns to them, and others can't be parried at all, forcing you to dodge. Homura Hime also has some platforming and exploration segments. They're usually pretty short because combat plays a far larger role, but they're fine since they mostly use the game's pre-established battle mechanics. Finally, I also have to give some credit to the art style. I really like both the 2D and 3D art used in the game, and it certainly helps tie the game's aesthetics to its setting. Homura Hime's release date is yet to be announced. I know a lot of stealth games tend to be on the more serious side, even though I admit it's not usually my cup of tea. If you're the same, then how about the cutest stealth game out there? That's Hoomanz by Coffee Cup. Love the studio name, by the way. In Hoomanz, you play as Shu, a mythical forest guardian who has to scare away all the humans causing trouble in the forest. Only problem is, Shu is just too cute to be scary. So you have to do your job under the cover of darkness. First, you have to attract the humans to your position using noises or throwing objects. And then, while they're among the shadows, stressed and scared, you strike. It also helps that you move faster while in the dark. After scaring a certain number of humans, next area opens up and you can proceed through the level. You can also rescue a number of floppy friends, these firefly-like things, in each level. Besides the light and dark mechanics, you have stage hazards that can both be used in your favor or against you, like these bear traps that stun whoever touches them, the sticks that create noise when stepped on, or the switches that move objects around. It makes for a pretty interesting experience, and the levels are overall not long enough to tire me out. Scaring all the humans in the stage gives the whole thing a semi-collectathon feel, which I think is pretty interesting. Hoomanz is already out. Typically, I'm not into 3D aerial shooters, but even so, House Fighters Total Mess by Revolo Games managed to catch my eye. House Fighters has you engaging in dogfights as a toy plane inside a house. The demo only has one plane, but the game makes it clear that you'll be able to pick from multiple in the full game. From there, you enter several different missions, shooting bullets, rockets, and dropping bombs at your foes. Some missions also mix up these mechanics in creative ways for the narrative. For example, in one you have to drop down cake ingredients in a bowl as if they were bombs and light the candles with rockets. There is a story to these missions, but it's mostly just a backdrop to the gameplay. What is interesting about it though, is the setting itself. You might think that having all missions set in a house would feel repetitive after a while, but at least in the demo it didn't. There are changes to the environment every time, as if each mission is a different setup for playing that kids in the house arranged. The gameplay itself was pretty intuitive and fast-paced. The only weird thing to me was that the Y-axis wasn't inverted, like it usually is for flight controls in games. So instead you press up to go up and down to go down. You can change that in the settings menu, but it's funny to me that it's not the default. House Fighters Total Mess is already out. So, these are the game recommendations I'm leaving you with for now. I'll post part 2 after a while, and then we'll hopefully get back to the essays. I already have some ideas for the videos after that one too. Stay tuned if you want to see that as well. For the developers of all those games I mentioned, good luck on your launches, since so many of you will release your creations out there before the end of October, which is probably when the video will come out, I suppose. My name is Strig, and thank you for your patronage. If you're leaving already, please consider giving a tip in the form of a comment and a like. And if you're interested in coming back, don't forget to subscribe and ring the notification bell on your way out. Thank you for visiting Strig's Game Café.